I didn't think twice about the message when it landed in my inbox. Just another stranger liking a photo of my dog on a hiking trail, then following up with a comment about the mountains behind him. I almost didn't answer. I got messages like that all the time, mostly from guys who wanted something fast and lost interest the second I didn't reply in 10 minutes. But this one asked a real question. Which trail is that? Not a compliment, not a line, just curiosity. So I answered. His name was Eli. No last name on the profile, no location tag, just a plain photo of him leaning against a fence somewhere with mountains behind him too, like maybe he'd taken it the same week I took mine. We talked about the trail for a few messages. Then about gear. Then about nothing in particular, the way conversations drift when neither person is trying to end them. I was 27, working the front desk at a physical therapy clinic, splitting rent with a roommate who left dishes in the sink for days at a time, and driving a car that made a noise I'd stopped asking mechanics about because I didn't want to hear the price. My life was fine. Ordinary. The kind of ordinary where a stranger asking about a hiking trail felt like the most interesting thing that had happened to me in weeks. By the second week, we'd moved off the app and onto texting. He didn't send photos of himself doing anything flashy. No watches, no cars, no rooftop bars. Just dumb stuff. A picture of burnt toast with the caption, "I have failed as a man." A picture of his dog, a scruffy mutt named Biscuit, asleep in a laundry basket. I liked that about him right away. He didn't seem like he was trying to convince me of anything. We talked every day after that. Not big dramatic conversations, just the small stuff that fills up a life. What I ate for lunch. A weird customer at the clinic. A show he was rewatching for the fourth time. It got to the point where I looked forward to my phone buzzing more than I looked forward to actual plans with actual people, and that should have worried me more than it did. 3 weeks in, he asked if he could call me instead of texting. His voice surprised me. Lower than I expected, careful, like he thought about his words before he used them. We talked for 2 hours that first call, and somehow it didn't feel long. He asked about my family. I told him about my mom, about my dad leaving when I was 9, about the 2 years I spent putting myself through community college with a job folding towels at a gym. He didn't flinch at any of it. He just listened like it mattered. When I asked what he did for work, he said something vague about consulting. I didn't push. Consulting is one of those words people use when they don't want to explain their whole life to a stranger on the phone, and I understood that better than most people would. "Do you like what you do?" I asked. There was a pause before he answered. "Most days." "That's not really an answer," I said. He laughed. "No, it's not." I let it go because it didn't matter yet. He was funny, he was easy to talk to, and he asked me questions like my answers actually meant something to him. That was enough. A month into it, he asked if he could send me something. I told him he didn't need to send me anything, that I wasn't the kind of girl who needed gifts from a guy she'd never met in person. He said it wasn't like that. 2 days later, a small box showed up at my apartment. Inside was a pair of hiking boots, the exact brand I'd complained about not being able to afford after my old ones fell apart on a trail in March. Good boots. Expensive ones. I stood in my kitchen holding them, feeling something twist in my stomach that wasn't quite excitement and wasn't quite worry. I called him the second I opened the box. "Eli, these cost like $200. He said, So that's not a normal gift from a guy who calls himself a consultant," I said. I let it slide again, because the alternative was asking questions I wasn't ready to hear the answers to. I told myself he was just generous. Some people are generous. Not everything has to mean something bigger. We planned to meet in person about 6 weeks after that first message, which felt slow to some of my friends and reckless to my mother, who thought I should never meet a stranger from the internet under any circumstances short of a police escort. I told her I'd meet him somewhere public, somewhere with people around, and that if anything felt wrong, I'd leave. He picked a coffee shop downtown, one of those places with exposed brick and a menu that used words like small batch. I got there early because I always get places early, sat at a table near the window, and watched the door like it owed me money. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Not because he looked different from his photos, he didn't, but because of how he moved through the room. Easy. Unbothered. Like he belonged wherever he stood. He wore a plain gray shirt and jeans, nothing flashy, but there was something about the way people's eyes followed him without him doing anything to earn it. He spotted me and smiled, and for a second every nervous thought in my head went quiet. "Hi," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Sorry, I'm 2 minutes late. Traffic downtown is a war crime." I laughed, more from relief than the joke itself. "Hi." We talked for 3 hours that first meeting. It felt like the phone calls, easy and unforced, except now I could see his face when he laughed at something, could see the way he tapped his fingers on the table when he was thinking. Nothing about him screamed money. His shirt wasn't designer, his shoes were normal sneakers, and when the bill came he paid it without making a show of it, the way anyone would. "Do you want to see the boat?" he asked, out of nowhere, near the end of the visit. I frowned. "What boat?" He waved a hand like he was correcting himself. "Sorry, bad joke. I meant, do you want to go for a walk by the water?" I should have caught it then. I didn't. Over the following weeks, we saw each other every few days. He never took me anywhere that felt out of my budget, which in hindsight should have told me something, because a man trying to hide his money doesn't take a woman to expensive places where questions get asked. We went on walks, to diners, to a dollar movie theater that showed films 3 months after they left the big screens. It felt real. It felt like something that could actually last. My roommate started noticing how often I wasn't home. She asked me one night while we were both standing in the kitchen, her eating cereal out of the box, me waiting for tea to steep. "So who is this guy nobody's met?" "His name is Eli," I said. "We're taking it slow." "Slow like you're at his place 4 nights a week," she said. I threw a dish towel at her. "It's not 4 nights. It's basically 4 nights. I didn't tell her about the boots, or the vague consulting job, or the way he sometimes paused before answering questions about his life, like he was deciding how much of the truth I could handle. I didn't tell her because I didn't want to hear her say the thing I was already starting to suspect, which was that something about this didn't add up. The first real crack came on a Tuesday. We were at his apartment, which he described as a place he was staying at while doing some work in the city. It was nice, nicer than my whole building, but not outrageous. A doorman, sure, but I told myself doormen existed in plenty of ordinary buildings. His phone rang while we were making dinner, and he stepped into the other room to take it. I wasn't trying to listen. I just heard enough through the wall to catch words that didn't belong in a normal conversation. Board. Quarterly. Shareholders. When he came back, I asked, casually, "Who was that?" "Work thing," he said. "Nothing exciting." "Sounded exciting," I said. "Someone said the word shareholders." He went still for half a second, then recovered with a smile that felt just slightly too fast. "My consulting client has a board. I help them prep for calls sometimes." I let it go. Again. I keep saying that because it's true. I kept letting things go, because the version of him I had in my head was easier to live with than whatever the real answer might be. Write in the comments if you'd have started asking harder questions by this point, because looking back, I should have. It all came apart on a Thursday night in October. I was over at his place, curled up on the couch while he answered emails on his laptop before we watched something. His phone buzzed on the table between us and lit up with a notification. I wasn't snooping. It was right there, face up, impossible not to see. A news alert. His name, full name, in the headline. Something about a quarterly earnings call and a company I recognized because it made half the phones and half the software running half the offices in the country. I stared at it for a long moment before I picked up the phone and turned the screen toward him. "Eli," I said, my voice not sounding like mine. "What is this?" He looked at the screen, then at me, and something in his face shifted from relaxed to careful in half a second. He started, then stopped. "That's your name," I said. "On a headline about a company worth I don't even know how many billions." He set his laptop down slowly, like he was buying himself time. "Yeah," he said. "That's me." The room felt like it tilted. I sat there holding his phone, staring at a headline that used words like founder and stake and net worth, feeling like the last 2 months of my life had happened to somebody else. "You told me you did consulting," I said. "I do, technically. I consult for my own company." It wasn't exactly a lie. "It was exactly a lie," I said, standing up. "Every consulting answer, every boots that cost $200 like it was nothing, every board call you took in the other room. That was all a lie, Eli." He stood up too, hands raised slightly like he was trying to calm something down before it got worse. "I didn't want you to know right away. I wanted you to like me before you knew." "Before I knew what?" I said. "That you're rich. That you could buy this apartment building and probably 12 more without blinking." "Yes," he said, quiet now. "That's exactly what I didn't want. I've had people find out and change overnight. Suddenly, they're not asking about my day, they're asking what I'm going to do with my money, or where we're going on vacation, or whether I could just help their brother get a job. I wanted one person who liked me before any of that mattered." I sat back down because my legs didn't feel steady. "So this whole time, I was being tested." "No," he said, sitting across from me now, careful, like he was approaching something that might spook. "Not tested. Protected. I was protecting the one thing that felt normal in my life." I didn't know what to say to that, because some small, ugly part of me understood it. I'd grown up watching my mother get treated differently the second people found out she cleaned houses for a living, treated worse for being poor the same way some people probably treated him worse or fake nicer for being rich. But understanding it didn't make it hurt less. "You should have told me," I said. "Not on day one, maybe, but before I fell for you." His face changed at that. "Before you what?" I hadn't meant to say it, not yet, not like that. Sitting in a designer apartment holding a phone that had just blown up my entire understanding of the last 2 months. But it was out there now. "Before I fell for you," I said again, quieter. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, even though every rational part of me was screaming that I should get up and leave and go home and think this through somewhere that didn't have his cologne all over the couch cushions. "I fell for you too," he said. "That's the part one was scared to lose." I went home that night anyway. I needed space, needed to sit in my own apartment with my own noisy car parked outside and remember who I was before all this. My roommate found me at the kitchen table at midnight, staring at my phone like it might explain itself if I stared hard enough. "What happened?" she asked, sitting down across from me. I told her everything. The headline, the name, the company, the boots that suddenly made a horrible kind of sense. She sat there with her mouth slightly open through most of it. He's that Eli, she said finally. The tech guy. I follow like 6 articles about him because my old boss used to work for one of his companies. I put my head down on the table. Please don't tell me anything else about him right now. She didn't. She just sat with me while I processed the fact that the man I'd let myself fall for over 2 months of easy phone calls and burnt toast pictures was worth more money than I'd ever be able to picture in my head. Would you have kept dating him if he told you on day one? Or would you have run? Let me know in the comments, because I've asked myself that question 100 times since that night, and I still don't fully know the answer. I didn't answer his texts for 2 days. He didn't push, which surprised me. No wall of messages, no calls at odd hours, just 1 text a day. Simple ones. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. I meant what I said. On the 3rd day, I agreed to meet him, but not at his place. I picked the same coffee shop where we'd had our first date, because I needed somewhere that felt like it belonged to the version of us before the headline. He got there early this time, sitting at the same table by the window, and when I walked in he stood up like he wasn't sure if I was going to sit down or turn around and leave. I sat down. "Thank you," he said, "for coming." "I didn't come here to yell at you," I said. "I came here because I want to understand something and I need you to be honest, actually honest, for the whole conversation." He nodded once. "Ask me anything." "Why me?" I said. "Out of every person you could message, every person who would probably know exactly who you are and exactly what that means, why message some random girl with a photo of her dog on a hiking trail?" He was quiet for a second, turning his coffee cup slowly on the table. "Because you didn't ask me anything about my job for 2 weeks," he said. "You asked about the trail. About my dog. About whether I liked burnt toast unironically. Nobody does that with me anymore. The second people know who I am, every conversation becomes about something else. Investments, connections, opportunities. You just wanted to know if I liked hiking." I sat with that for a moment. It didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open in the wall I'd built up over the last 3 days. "That doesn't excuse the lying," I said. "I know," he said. "It was wrong. I should have found a way to tell you sooner, before it got this far, before you started," he paused, "before you started feeling something you didn't sign up to feel for someone you didn't fully know." I looked at him across the table, this man who'd sent me hiking boots because I complained about mine, who'd learned my coffee order without asking twice, who I'd genuinely, stupidly, completely fallen for without knowing the full weight of who he actually was. "If we do this," I said slowly, "if I decide to actually try this with you, I need you to understand something. I'm not doing it because of the money. I don't want the money. I don't want the apartment or the boat or whatever else is sitting in your life that I haven't found out about yet." "There's no boat," he said. That was actually a joke that time. I almost laughed despite myself. "I'm serious, Eli." "I know you are," he said, "and that's exactly why I want to try too. We didn't fix everything in one conversation. Trust doesn't work that way, no matter how good the apology is." Over the next few weeks, he told me things in pieces, the way people do when they're finally letting someone all the way in. He told me about growing up with a father who ran a small manufacturing company that turned into something huge almost by accident, about being 22 and suddenly running board meetings he didn't feel qualified to run, about learning fast because the alternative was watching everything fall apart. He told me about people who'd used him, women who'd gotten close because of the name attached to his bank account, friends who disappeared the moment he stopped being useful to them. I started to understand why he'd hidden it. Not agree with it completely, but understand it. The bigger test came about a month later when he asked me to come to a company event with him. Not some huge gala, he said, Just a dinner with some of his executive team and a few investors. I told him I had nothing to wear that would fit in a room like that, and he told me it didn't matter, that I could show up in jeans and he'd still want me there. I didn't wear jeans. I bought one nice dress with money I probably shouldn't have spent, and I walked into that dinner feeling like an imposter in my own life. The night went fine until one of the investors, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper questions, cornered me near the bar. "So how did you two meet?" she asked, in a tone that suggested she already had a theory and wanted me to confirm it. "Online," I said. "He liked a photo of my dog." She raised an eyebrow like that was somehow beneath the room we were standing in. "And you had no idea who he was?" "None," I said. "Found out 3 weeks ago from a phone notification." She studied me for a second, like she was trying to decide if I was lying. "Interesting," she said finally, and walked off toward someone more important. Eli found me a few minutes later, must have seen something on my face, because he asked what was wrong. "People here think I'm after something," I said quietly. "Do you?" I said. "Because half the room is looking at me like I'm a problem you haven't dealt with yet." He took my hand right there in front of everyone, which felt like a bigger statement than anything he could have said. "Then let them watch," he said. "I don't care what this room thinks about us. I care what you think." That was the moment I stopped worrying about whether this could actually work. Not because the money stopped mattering, it would always complicate things in ways I was still learning about, but because I finally believed he meant what he said back at that coffee shop. He wasn't choosing the easy version of a relationship. He was choosing the hard, complicated, real one, with a girl who still drove a car that made a noise nobody could explain. We hit rough patches after that, plenty of them. His schedule ate entire weeks at a time. My friends struggled to treat me normally once word got out, some of them suddenly a little too interested in my life, others distant in a way that felt like jealousy wearing a polite mask. Reporters found the story eventually, which meant photos of us leaving restaurants showed up online with captions guessing at things that weren't true. I hated that part more than anything, the sense that strangers were writing a version of my life I didn't recognize. But through all of it, the small stuff stayed the same. He still sent me pictures of Biscuit doing something ridiculous. He still asked about my day like it mattered more than his board meetings. He still remembered my coffee order without asking. The money never went away, but it stopped being the loudest thing in the room, at least between the two of us. About 6 months after that first message about a hiking trail, he took me back to that same trail, the one from my old photo. We hiked most of the way in silence, just enjoying the quiet, and near the top he stopped and turned to me with an expression I hadn't seen before, more nervous than I'd ever seen him in a boardroom or a 5-star dinner. I already know what you're going to say, and no, I'm not asking for a ring size just because your last name might come with a lot of zeros attached to it." He laughed, some of the nerves breaking. "Not that," he said. "Not yet, anyway." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folder, and for one confused second I thought he was about to hand me legal paperwork, which would have been the strangest proposal in human history. Instead, it was something else entirely. A deed for a small piece of land not far from that trail, a cabin already built on it, nothing extravagant, just simple and quiet and surrounded by trees. "I wanted somewhere that was just ours," he said. "No boardrooms, no headlines, no assistants. Somewhere we could be exactly the two people who liked that stupid photo of your dog." I stood there holding a folder worth more money than I'd made in 5 years combined, and somehow it felt like the least important part of the moment. What mattered was the look on his face, waiting to see if this simple thing meant as much to me as it meant to him. "It's perfect," I said, because it was. We stood at the top of that trail for a long time after that, not saying much, just looking out over the same view from that first photo he'd commented on months earlier, back when I was just a girl with a dog, and he was just a stranger asking which trail that was. I never expected to fall for a billionaire. I never expected to be the kind of person who ends up in headlines I don't recognize, standing in rooms full of people quietly judging whether I belong there. But somewhere between burnt toast jokes and a pair of boots I didn't ask for, I fell for a person, not a bank account. And somehow, against every instinct that told me this was too complicated to work, it did. If you made it this far, let me know what you would have done the second you found out. Walk away or stay and figure it out. Drop it in the comments, because I still think about how close I came to leaving that coffee shop and never looking back.